Do you have any opinions on the ethics of gene editing?
I do. So the biggest thing about gene editing is you're kind of like DNA is something that is common in all living things. It determines what becomes a tree, what becomes a chicken, what becomes a person. There's a perception, and when you begin to manipulate it for a purpose, albeit even for a good purpose, that you're playing God.
Gene editing technology has advanced significantly in the past 20 years. Researchers Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna discovered the Cas9 gene in 2011 and were awarded a Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their discovery in 2020.
The Cas9 gene is used in techniques like CRISPR to find and eliminate diseases from human DNA. In the future, this can be used in a variety of ways, and while some may be used to better a life, others could harm society.
What people are worried about with a lot of this new technology is there going to potentially be the ability for people to change these things and kind of truly do some things that are ethically very questionable. There's a lot of oppressed people in this world, right? And there's a lot of governments that have control over a lot of people. China, for example, there is a group of people there that are subjectively marginalized or kind of pushed to the periphery. Theoretically, you could use a lot of this gene technology against their will to potentially manipulate them and make it so that they kind of fade out as a culture and genetically. They're doing this right now with mosquitoes. Mosquitoes and people, even though they are totally different, right? I mean, one is this tiny little thing that would fit on your fingernail, and the other is, this human being walking around like us. They're using this technology right now to manipulate mosquitoes so they cannot breed and they die out and kind of are having forced sterilization, if you will, to try and control malaria.
Modern-day genetic engineering can trace its roots back to the eugenics movement of the late 19th to mid-20th century. Eugenics posited that humans possess both positive and negative traits, and that the proliferation of positive traits and the removal of negative traits is necessary for the continual prosperity and future survival of our species. Eugenics was used by xenophobic groups like the Nazis to justify genocidal doctrine. Within the United States, 33 of the 48 states in the early 20th century had laws promoting and allowing for eugenic practices, such as forced sterilization, with California being the lead in the eugenics movement in our country.
Madison Grant, a well-known figure in the national parks, was also a prominent eugenist. He wrote The Passing of the Great Race, an incredibly racist book describing the scientific differences between all races and showing which were better. His book gave eugenists of the time scientific backing for their beliefs.
From the span of 1927 to 1981, around 70,000 forced sterilizations happened in the United States. 20,000 were in California. An estimated 831 participants are still alive today.
A core reason for this was the Supreme Court's decision in the Buck v. Bell case, in which a young lady named Carrie Buck was forcibly sterilized at an epileptic asylum for being feeble-minded. It was common for women to be put in these institutions for unreasonable reasons, and doctors there were testing the possibility of sterilization on the patients to keep the population from becoming feeble-minded. Eugenics in the early 20th century was considered the scientific cutting edge. Many powerful and influential figures supported the movement. This included Alexander Graham Bell, as well as former President Theodore Roosevelt and Helen Keller.
When I'm working with parents who want to have their family, but they can't, and they come in, they choose a donor who looks nothing like them, and they're choosing qualities in that egg donor that they feel superior, right, than the qualities that they have, be that maybe eye color, hair color, skin color, height, athletic ability perhaps, or IQ, even though they're not, editing the genes on the germline level. They are still trying to play with that, all like the dominant and the non-dominant genes, right? Because they're trying to make certain genes come through. Where the issue sometimes comes up is, well, what do we define as gene that needs to be modified? So when the parents I work with, they are picking their donors, like I said, they're picking them based on certain physical characteristics that they deem to be superior. And then they're also working with embryologists that can possibly alter some genetics at the embryo level as well. Going into the future, are we going to be using genome editing for traits that are not important for health?
The continued development and future use of gene editing technology could have both positive and negative impacts. To ensure that genetic engineering contributes to society positively, certain measures need to be taken and general knowledge needs to be spread. While we may feel like eugenics lies in the past, it is important not to become complacent. Between 2006 and 2010, over 200 forced sterilizations were carried out within California. And while gene editing is still in its its infancy, it is important to ensure that legal policies are not created with the purpose of discrimination and harming citizens.
I think it's something that needs to be kind of on everyone's mindset as this technology moves forward in all its various different ways to help people and potentially not help people and do some weird kind of science fiction bad stuff.